Okay, so let's begin. There's enough people. Those join will join us um, with our practice. Let's start with what we have been normally starting the classes with a moment of silence. Make sure your microphones are mute, and we're going to begin again, just closing your eyes, making sure whether you're sitting or standing, unless you're driving, don't close your eyes. Otherwise, close your eyes. And as you do that, just make an effort to remain still, that the body is still. There is no movement in the body. And as you keep the eyes closed, the body is still. Bringing yourself to the here and now, bringing yourself to the present moment. Leaving the past and the future out of this practice, out of this moment. Connecting with everything that is present without creating attachment to it. Making a commitment to keep that approach, to remain present without creating attachment. Gently bring yourself back. Open your eyes. I wanted to, while people keep joining, I wanted to share something with you. And if you if you're a teacher, maybe you have a routine like not only the one that we just did. If you don't, then like I said before, I recommend you to have one. Um, and there is something else that I do before I go live. And this I could do it live, but it's just an extra time. Um, I'll do it in my classes, in my sessions. And it's not only to do what I just did, to make sure that I am present, that the person that is with me or the people, the group that's with me is present, but also to make sure that we are connecting to the right source. And I don't mean the right source saying that there is a wrong source, there is one source. But when I mean the right source, making sure I'm connecting to this universal source, whether you call it God or you call it the universe or consciousness, that's up to you. But making sure you're connecting to that source. And you don't have to follow my script. Actually, I'd say don't follow my script. Make your own that comes out of your heart. What I personally do is I make sure that I remind myself to connect that to that higher source, to that higher self. And all I say, and it changes from time to time, all I say is reminding myself basically to connect. And like I said, at this time, I probably don't even remember exactly what I said, but it was something like connect with the source, allow universal knowledge and universal wisdom to connect with everybody participating in this session. Not only that flows through me, because that is a bit of a contradiction to all the teachings. So I am not the channel of the source or the wisdom or the knowledge. We are in this together. So I ask for all of us participating to connect with that source and to be able to transmit this wisdom in whatever is happening, the interaction, the meeting, the conference, whatever it is. And this helps me not only to actually connect with this source, whether you believe it or not, but it helps me to something much more trivial, and is to let go of my ego, of thinking that I have to come up with the solution, with the answer, with the right word, with the right sentence, or so on and so on. And understanding that none of this belongs to me, and that is a flow that I am connecting to, that I am jumping in as I, again, request to do so. Anyhow, it's just something else that I do, and if it helps you, then again, you can create your own. Maybe you already have your own, so that's great. Okay, let me just close this here. Let's start with well, before I start creating the groups, I see people keep joining, so I'm gonna give a couple more minutes to that. And I have a little something I want to say, and is, there's two things. One is a reminder to all of you. The first one is a quote that I wanted to start the class with, and it's about healing. And it says, healing doesn't mean the damage never existed. It means the damage no longer controls our lives. I repeat this. Healing does not mean the damage never existed. It means the damage no longer controls our lives. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful teaching that again, something we spoke previously in past classes, is not about never feeling again or disconnecting from past experiences or karmas. Is about learning to live with them without them affecting us. And I honestly, might sound silly, but I don't see it any different from learning to live with parts of your body, like your ear. It's just there. It's part of your body. You don't dwell about it. You don't cry because you have an ear, or because your ear might not look exactly how you want it to. It's just part of you, right? I mean, not sure, some of you can say, well, you can go through plastic surgery and get a nicer ear. That defeats the purpose of the teaching. But I mean, I get you could go there. But for the sake of this statement, it's just accepting that things are there and they're just part of us, and we just move on with the rest of the life, you know. And karma is that. It's often that simple. And I know it's not that simple in many cases, where we are drowning in the karma, we're drowning in the experience. Well, you have to get yourself out of the water into a safe space, and then begin the process of accepting that it was just an experience that's there. It's just an ear, it's just an experience. It doesn't define life itself, nor your life. And the other thing, less profound, is about the guidelines for submitting your homework. So if you have been studying, that sounded a little cocky, like profound. I don't know if that was profound at all, but maybe for me it was. Anyhow, about homework. Submitting, there is a link. I'm going to put it on the global chat right now. Let me just pull it out. It's right here. Okay. So it is now on the chat. You can go and see it. That link takes you to the homework submission guidelines. It's a form. Yeah, and if you've been in the school for a while, then you know that that's the form you use to submit your homework. Okay, so I want you all, I mean, some of you are already using it, so this doesn't apply to you, but if you're submitting homework to me using my email, then use these guidelines, use this form, please. Remember also, in this particular course, the format we're using for grading is not the homework itself, except for those that are not participating in the live classes. So that being clear, if you want to send your homework even if you're participating in the class, or if you're not, use the form, okay? And more important, keep track of your homework. I'm sure you heard this from the student's advisor, from other teachers. Keep track of your homework. Have a folder in your computer with the different courses, the different terms, saving your homework, okay? Nor the teachers or the school is responsible for saving your homework. I'm sure many of you already know that. So this is just, again, a reminder. Save your homework, use yeah, that's my email right there. Use the form. And in my case, for this class, you are submitting the homeworks of this class to myself, okay? Some other teachers have different forms, not form in the thing I just printed, but forms of grading you. So some of you have exams, some of you have live things to do. Again, every class is different, but we all use this form to submit homework. So questions in regards to that little statement I just made? The form is there. My email also, somebody, Jessica, just posted it there. Thank you, Jessica. And
I have a question.
yes,
This is Annie. Yeah. So I have been submitting the homework to hello at Yoga Veda. Are you getting that?
did you, somebody else send me an email saying the same thing you did? I don't know if it was you. And I just, a couple hours ago, I replied to that email. If it's not you, then the answer is no, do not send it to hello Yoga Veda. Send it directly to me.
Okay, so yeah. I will send the past homework.
Yeah, and if you have been submitting your homework, not using the form, don't bother in putting it all in the form just for me. If you want to do it for you, if you're very excessively organized and you want to transfer all into this form, perfect. You can send it to, that's not a problem, but you don't have to, okay? But from now on, from this week on, then use the form, please. Somebody saying, sorry if this is redundant, but if we are doing the live group discussions, we don't have to submit anything. Is that correct? That is correct, because you are still journaling. You are coming into the class, into the live class with your journaling, with the results of your experience, and then you're sharing with the rest of the group. You are participating, so yes, you're correct. You don't have to submit it because you are already participating in the class. I can see that because you're here, because we're taking, we're checking who shows up to the live classes, and because you are doing the homework by participating in the class and by participating in what we're going to do next, which is the group sessions. Yeah, so I hope that answers the question, Valerie. And okay, let's move on now. So done with this. If there are other questions in regards to this, just post them. And if I'll check the chat while you guys are in the group and privately answer those questions. For now, I'm going to start creating the sessions, okay? So as soon as you see the session invitation popping up in your screen, accept it. They're all live now, and I'll see you back in about 12, 15 minutes, depending on how big your group is. Nikki, can you hear me? Carly, can you hear me? Okay, she's on. So I want to. Okay, I just closed all the sessions, so they should all be back in a few more seconds. Just wait until everybody's back. Okay, seems like everybody's back. Okay, anybody that would like to share with the whole group now? Somebody that had a big insight, a big realization, or just simply feels like sharing something to the whole group?
I'd like to share something.
Go ahead.
I was actually in the middle of saying this to my group, and then we got cut off. But we were talking about things that we do to help bring ourselves to the present moment. And one practice I like to do is first experience all of the senses. So notice like everything that I hear, what I see behind my eyelids, the smell, the taste, what I feel on the surface of my skin, and then bring that down to what's beneath, like at the muscular level, my joints, and then focus on the breath, and then finally on the heart. And in that moment of concentrating when I'm waiting to feel the heartbeat, it's like everything else in the world is on pause because I'm just waiting to feel the heartbeat. And that helps me just kind of come down to the absolute present moment.
That's a beautiful practice. That's a beautiful practice, and I can see how, yeah, sure, it could be very useful. Great, thanks for sharing that. Anyone else?
Sure. In my group, we had a few people. This is Anna. Sorry. In my group, we had a few people that were talking about how it can be frustrating sometimes to focus on beginner things when we want to be masters, but that when we truly master the beginner things, then we can begin to see ourselves as masters. You know, you can't be a master if you haven't mastered the very minutia of your practice. So we talked about how profound it is to actually do these beginner things and things that we might seem, or that might seem to be beginner things.
Yeah, absolutely. So important. One of the things that I'm constantly reminding to myself and to people, and there is an analogy that I can think of, and it's my house is built with bricks, and so it's constantly, I'm constantly seeing it. But when you're gonna build a house, you think of the house, and you might have the design, and you see the whole thing, yeah. But to build a house, you need to put one brick at a time. And each brick represents what Anna is talking about, the little things, the minute things, the sometimes insignificant things. Those are the bricks. Those are each brick. So you cannot forget about something that is intrinsically inherent to the very thing itself you want to build, right? So thank you for sharing, Anna. Anyone else? One last person?
Hi. I just have two questions. At the beginning of this course, you told us that if you are following the perfect diet for your dosha or whatever, and even if you're doing all the pranayama and all of these things, if your mind is not clear, basically nothing will work. My question is, what if you are, for example, following a heavy diet, a vata diet that has, for example, fat and animal consumption, and you also try to do pranayama or meditation, which I'm trying to do right now, and I'm finding myself to be too grounded, and sometimes actually getting bored of just sitting and meditating. Next thing is about being neutral or indifferent with thoughts. I find two things. The first thing that maybe it's my nature that I suppress my feelings a lot. So if I focus on something else away from what's bothering me, actually what's bothering me starts to grow more and more in my head. And the other thing that I find certain group of people, like young people, for example, whatever they do, whatever they say to me, I was a teacher. I'm very indifferent, and I just I don't deal with them like how I deal with adults, and I find it very hard to deal with adults in that way of being indifferent. I hope I made sense.
Okay. Sarah, you challenged my memory right there. I might need you to post the questions again on the chat. I would like to address them all, and I think many of us might have an opinion or something they would like to share. You first said about the diet, like even if the diet is perfect for your dosha and your imbalances, and if the mind is not, it might not work. And we did talk about that, but it's important to mention that it's not that it won't work, it's that it won't be a permanent effect. So you might notice when you start a diet that is suited for your specific constitution, that you start feeling the effects, the difference, the benefits. But as that first, we could say, rush fades away, then the very thing that's been there for a long time, in this case, the imbalances of the mind, better said, the imbalances of the mind, the patterns of the mind, because the imbalances of the mind can be benefited from food. Food diet can help these imbalances of the mind, yeah, but the patterns, the habits that we have in the mind are not going to disappear. That's like saying that the memories you have of something will disappear because you change your diet. Your memory is not going to go away unless you have a neurological problem. So, but certain, and these are vasanas, yeah, remember the tendencies, and then the samskaras, the impressions, these impressions that we have, as saying, there is an excellent example. I was having a private one-on-one with one of the students in this course, and I brought up this particular situation of, there is a traditional African root called iboga, and from this root they take something that is called ibogaine, and this substance has an incredible effect over addicts, especially addicts of heroin, heavy drugs. So some of you might already know what I'm talking about. Well, it was found by Westerners back in the 70s, and of course it existed. The shamans in Africa were using it for ever and ever, but it was found by Westerners, as I said, in the 70s and 60s or 70s. And anyhow, this person happens to be a drug addict, and he found out that after taking this thing that these natives gave him, the day after, he was healed. He was not feeling the cravings of the drug. And so he started finding out what was it that they gave him. Anyway, time comes to now, we have clinics around the world that deal with this substance. It was banned in many countries for reasons that we're not going to talk now. But the point is that what they found out is that this particular root, the ibogaine, could remove the synapses of the brain, of the cells of the brain, and take away the addiction. But it could not take away the memories of wanting that thing. Yeah, so we have psychological addictions and we have physiological addictions. So you can be psychologically addicted to something. Of course, these for many scholars is not considered an addiction, but now we know that it is, and especially in yoga is considered. You can have mental addictions, and these we can call them, like I just said at first, patterns, habits. But these habits develop a craving, me wanting something. Yeah. So this is in regards to to two of your questions. We can change certain things, but if we do not address the mental aspect, the conscious mental aspect of that very thing we're trying to change, in this case, the heroin addicts will get out of the clinic feeling great. I'm healed. I don't feel the need to go for the drug. But then they will go back to the same house, the same friends, the same partner, the same environment, the same everything that took them to become an addict in the first place. So you have that plus the same mental patterns that I'm not doing anything, neither internally nor externally, to change. So what they found out, and this is actually something you can research on the internet, what they found out is that the people that went through this treatment and that was cured afterwards had more chances to remain sober, to remain clean, if they changed their habits, not only their mental habits, but their habits of living. Those on the other side that decided not to take care of that part, that they just went to the clinic and said, I'm cured, I go back to the same, with the exception of the drug, had really high chances of going back. The amount of patients that went back to use the drug, the heroin, are much, much, much more higher in the group that decided not to take care of the environmental, the mental aspect, rather than the other group. So what that's telling us, yes, is very important to take care of the mental aspect from a conscious point of view, from a habitual point of view, so we can get rid of these scars that are made by the constant actions that we take, that then develop these tendencies of us wanting to think. You said, when I try to think of something else to avoid thinking of the very thing I don't want to think about, then I think more about that thing, right? I mean, you said it in other words. That is not necessarily what is happening. I'm not saying it's not at all what is happening, but it might not be. I want you to consider this. The tendency develops a craving, yeah? Means I want it. Imagine, let's speak in a physiological term. I'm hungry. It's a physiological thing. It's just my body sends me a signal when I'm hungry. But if I join this natural process with the thought, then I am not really thinking of something else. Now, that's not what you're doing. What you're doing is you're saying, well, I'm picking another thought. But the very thought of being hungry comes back. So imagine the hunger physiological response as the scar that has a tendency that brings a craving. So you cannot really control that. You cannot control the craving that is going to show up and say, hey, I want this. Like your body saying, hey, I'm hungry. But at the moment that shows up, you go back to your point of concentration. Now, the other thing that we need to address to is, what are you choosing to concentrate on? This is very important too. Because if I'm choosing to concentrate, and this is a basic teaching of yoga, if I'm choosing to concentrate in something that does not hold an inherent power, like a mantra, like a mudra, like a yantra, like any of these things that we know are connected with the universal source, then my chances of succeed are much lower. Saying if I'm concentrating on a vein, in a superficial thought, yeah, I'm concentrated on chocolate rather than concentrating on that thing I don't want, then your chances of succeeding are much less, are lower than if you're choosing a tool that on its own is meant to reconnect you with the universal force, with the universal source, yeah, with God or however you want to call it. Now, the other questions, let's see, did you post the questions? I think I missed a couple. I addressed two at the same time. Can you hear me, Sarah? Yeah, okay, yeah, grounding. You talk about grounding. We also have to learn to discern, to recognize the difference, for instance, between grounding and dulling. Yeah, am I feeling grounded or am I feeling dull? Yeah, am I feeling low, like in this sort of kapha state, this something, it's mentioning here the gunas, in this tamasic state. Am I in this tamasic state that makes me feel dull and not motivated to do things? Or am I feeling grounded? No. So it is, first I will recommend you to ask that question and find out. And if the answer is still grounded, yeah, then I will combine my daily routines. I mentioned it before, certain things, food, exercises, meditations, ground us, have a telluric energy, and others have cosmic energy. So I would say, see what asanas, pranayamas, and so on you're doing based on your constitution that might be grounding you too much, yeah, and pick up some cosmic energy. So do some asanas, some pranayams that are more airy, more pushing towards the cosmic energies, and try to bring that balance. This is considering that the term we used is the accurate term, and then you're feeling too grounded. You mentioned something about your students and not feeling connected, feeling sort of detached. And my question would be, are you feeling completely disconnected from not feeling sympathy at all? Or just feeling disconnected from a safe space? If you're feeling disconnected from a no sympathy at all, is that the case?
No, I actually feel very connected to my students, but I don't feel the same way to adults. I find it easier to be with students.
Okay, so I got it the other way around. Okay, but again, do you feel disconnected in a way that you don't care if they live or they die, or if they suffer?
No.
Or
no,
you
I'm
just
very indifferent.
Indifferent in a form which you still feel empathy and maybe compassion, but you don't feel more.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I don't see a problem with that unless you absolutely need to connect with them, and then you simply want to bring your awareness to the heart and look, feel, hear their heart. Don't pay attention to anything else. If you absolutely have to connect with somebody for reasons that, again, are absolutely necessary, then simply try to, even if they're speaking, try to listen from your heart and into their hearts. And these will absolutely help. Of course, if you're not used to these kind of interactions of the heart, then it might take a little bit of practice on that. And then you will see that it will be quite easy to connect with people in that way, regardless of how you feel about them. Even if you dislike them, you will find it quite easy to connect with them, at least for brief periods of time. I hope that helps. We must move on. If you have more questions, feel free to send them to my email, and we'll continue this conversation. Now I need a volunteer. Sarah, would you like to be our volunteer today?
Sorry, but English is not my first language.
Okay. Okay. Well, then that's not important, but that's okay. Don't worry. Anybody else? Another volunteer?
You want someone to read?
Yes, correct.
I
Who is
will
the-
read.
Sandy.
Yes.
Okay, then beautiful. Then you can, Sandy, let's start. Let me pull out the readings here in my computer, and we're going to start with, where are they here? With Feed Wolf. So everybody open Feed Wolf's story in your screen, and as Sandy reads, we can also read in our minds.
Okay.
So off you go, Sandy.
Okay. Create your own destiny. Once upon a time, a grandfather told a story to his grandson. There were two wolves living inside of his heart and constantly fighting. One is filled with envy, anger, hatred, fear, and separation, and the other is full of joy, love, compassion, grace, and light. The grandson asked, "Who wins in your heart?" The grandfather replied, "The one I feed." The teaching. When we feed anger, we become the anger. When we feed envy, we become envious. When we feed hatred, we become hateful. When we feed fear, we become fear. We as human beings have similar down spiral experiences in life when we are entangled in the drama and darkness of our existence. We sometimes seem to not be able to get out of the trap, the deep human suffering hole, because we do not actually realize that we feed the human suffering, the anger wolf, constantly and unconsciously. When we feed light, we become the light. When we feed grace, we become grace. When we feed love, we become love. When we feed compassion, we become compassionate. When we stay high in spirit, we experience nothing but light. We have the choice in life to feed the wolf of our desires. The wolf we feed shapes our inner landscape as who we are and who we are becoming. It also shapes the outer landscape that we experience in this world as a reflection of our inner landscape and experiences. What we experience in the outer world is nothing but the creation and manifestation of our own inner paradigm. The food we eat, the thoughts we foster, the actions we take, the words we speak, the friends we choose, the paths we take, the job we seek, the partner we intuit to destiny with, the emotions we choose to experience, and the life we create to live have an adverse effect on our inner and outer lives. So start feeding our heart with love, compassion, grace, joy, gratitude, oneness, harmony, and then we become the light of all qualities. Ancient wisdom, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras 300 BC, Sutra 1.33. The mind becomes pure and calm by cultivating friendliness towards the happy, compassion for the unhappy, delight toward the virtuous, and benevolent indifference toward the unrighteous.
Thank you, Sandy. That last phrase, benevolent indifference towards the unrighteous. So these are the people we don't like, the people that we feel all these feelings. No, I was going to say negative feelings, but they're just feelings. No, not beneficial or useful feelings. Nevertheless. But that word there is key, guys. Benevolent indifference. You see, if it was just indifference, it's a huge difference. Sorry to be redundant, but if the word was just indifference, it would make a whole different context. Benevolent indifference. Keep that in mind. And going back to the reading, again, it sounds like many other teachings, not so simple. So I just feed the one, no? And of course, well, we continue to talk about the tendencies and the scars and the karma and so on and so on. So, but ultimately, what matters is that the wolf we feed can be transformed as the choices we make. in every minute, in every moment, in every hour, in every day, in every circumstance. Every time life gives you the choice, you are choosing to feed one of those wolves. And then the result of feeding that wolf, well, we know which one it is going to show up faster and stronger whenever is required. And then we wonder, why do I react like this in specific scenarios? Because that is the wolf you have been feeding. The one that, not only the one that is meant to react in that situation, no, is the one that is the strongest. I have an analogy towards our mind and our heart. We often use our mind, our brain, our intellect to connect with the world. And for me, I use the same analogy or story of the wolf. We are used to feed our intellect, our mind, that is powered by, physically speaking, the brain. We're used to feed that one. And then we stop feeding our heart. And what happens, of course, is when I need my heart to assist me with something, it's not there. I say it becomes very shy, and it speaks in a very gentle, low voice. It whispers almost. Can you hear me? That's often our hearts. And it could be the other way around. Don't mistake this. But traditionally speaking, for most of people, is this way. The heart gets so starved from energy that it begins to die and it can't even speak. Like somebody that's been outcast in a boat in the middle of the ocean for a week or 2 weeks without drinking water. When you ask them to speak, they can't speak. They're malnourished, they're sick, they're weak, and our hearts become that. So when somebody says, I don't know how to, which we have heard people in this group too saying, I'm not sure, I'm not used to, I don't know how. And so we say, okay, well, let's start connecting with your heart, somebody says. And then you try and it's like, nothing happens. And the mind, of course, is there. The wolf we feed is strong. It's like, forget about that heart. I can help you. Ask me, tell me, I'll do it for you. And because we don't develop patience, then we don't have the time, and of course, we're not in the space to sit down and get closer and hear this whispering. Hear the whispering of our hearts. So often when we are not used to it, we need to take the time. We need to become and work on patience. To, again, like a little kid, when we're learning to speak, you often need to pay attention. You need to really put a lot of energy into trying to decode this thing they're trying to say. Maybe some of you have the same experience with me, but I mean, again, let's not use me as an example. Same thing we have to do with our hearts. We have to be patient. We have to get closer, and we have to try to decode what the heart is telling us. And of course, as with the wolf that you feed, what is going to happen? The more you feed it, the stronger it grows. But you have to be patient. You have to continue to feed it, and you have to be patient. And eventually you will see how this intuition is bursting out of your heart, and there is maybe a balance between the intellect, the mind, and the heart, or even the heart takes over. It's important to keep a balance. We were given these tools not for, not by a coincidence, not by chance. So we might have tendencies to one or the other, but we want to keep a balance because sometimes one might be more useful than the other. And then we don't have a problem going to that advisor, yeah, there's another word I like to use, to ask for its advice. Comments or questions in regards to this first reading? Okay. Then when it comes, and again, we need to take the time to translate this wolf story into every aspect of our lives. Why is this happening in my life? Why? And see how, because somehow, this is a guarantee, somehow we are feeding that. Whether it's an emotion, a feeling, a response, a constant interaction that happens in our life. Sometimes we wonder if this particular situation continues to happen in my life, but I'm not consciously calling it. But there is something that it relates that situation to the wolf that you're feeding, to the emotion, to the feeling, to the reaction that you're having that feeds from that interaction, from that particular situation, and that is why it continues to happen. So if there are no questions or comments, then let's move on with the second reading. Sandy, would you like to continue with the second reading?
Sure.
Yes, great, thank you. So go on, this one is harmony.
Harmony, the source of manifestations. Once upon a time, there was a remote Chinese village that was suffering from extended drought. Every kind of prayer had been offered to put an end to the drought, but nothing had worked, and the people were desperate. The only remaining option is to fetch a well-known rainmaker from a remote area in the mountains. When the wise old man arrived in a covered cart, he aligned and sniffed the air in disdain, and then asked for a cottage on the outskirts of the village. He insisted that he be totally undisturbed and that his food be left outside his door. Nobody heard from him for 3 days, and then the village awoke to a downpour of rain mixed with snow, which was unheard of for that time of year. The villagers were greatly impressed and approached the wise old man, who was out of seclusion. "So you can make rain, sir?" inquired by the villagers. "No, I cannot make rain," the wise old man scoffed. "What do you mean? There was the most persistent drought until you came. Within 3 days it rained," objected by the villagers. "Oh," responded by the wise old man, "you see, I come from a region where everything is in order and harmonious. It rains when it should, and the people there are in order and harmonious. But that was not the case when I arrived here. People here were out of order and harmony, or Tao, and I was immediately infected. So I had to be quiet and alone until once more in what was in harmony and Tao, and then naturally it rained." Teaching. When we are not in harmony within ourselves, and we are not in a line with the elements of the world around us, we experience separation and split from fullness of life. Rain does not fall. Scarcity and lacking are experienced in life. Stress and anxiety are expressed every day, and even illnesses are manifested as a result. When we are in harmony within and without, we experience the walking beauty. We experience the oneness. We experience fullness. We experience the abundance. We experience ecstasy. And we even experience wonders and miracles in life. Harmony is what we are aligned with when everything is in order. Harmony is expressed in all aspects of life within ourselves. When we eat what our body needs and not what we crave, when we drink the pure nectar of fruits and the earth, not the toxins, when we speak the sweetness from a loving and compassionate heart and not to hurt someone, when we think of the divine and its purpose, when we live here to experience our soul evolution and act selflessly to serve humanity and not to feed the egoic self. Harmony is also expressed outside of us, respecting and working with Mother Earth and not controlling and manipulating her, following the flow of the river and the change of seasons, and earthly evolution is not against and not altered. Life itself, the planet Earth itself, and even individual self are always in harmony, full and in perfection. Just like the moon, it is always full, even when it appears not to be. Just like the sun, it always shines, even when we experience darkness. Just like a hummingbird, she always drinks the nectar of flowers, even in the dark gray winter. And just like the life we live, it is always in abundance and happiness, even when we experience scarcity and illness. The state of union, harmony, perfection, fullness, abundance, love, and compassion is the birthright of our existence. Everything manifested in our lives is expressed in many forms that may appear different from the intention and the source of creation due to the dressed up layers and shadows that we experienced through the ego, conditioned mind, and culture's beliefs and values. It is up to us to shed and see through the layers and illusions, to sense, experience, and to be in union and oneness with all that manifested and unmanifested of the divinity. This is the ultimate purpose of human race. Modern harmony. Most of us have been to a symphony concert. We notice that the first thing that happens is the concertmaster, first violinist, appears and plays one note on the violin. That note is A below middle C that resonates at a frequency of 440 cycles per second. This is the note that all the concert players will attune to for the duration of the performance. Not getting on this attunement of the fundamental frequency will cause the errant musician to be out of tune with the music, even if he plays the correct notes from the music score. The rare musician who has perfect pitch just knows where A440 is. A440 is the source of frequency that is at the root of the fundamental harmonies for all music in the West. In the same way, the stillness of meditation shines the source energy of consciousness that permeates all perception in all life everywhere. It is the source of universal wisdom that projects itself into every thought and every action that we do. We will be in perfect harmony with all other players who are thus attuned to this source energy. Those who do not resonate with this source energy will be in perpetual dissonance that reflects in the thoughts and actions of the player, even though they might have the same music in front of them as other players in the drama. It is so fundamental for our life to be rooted in the source of state of consciousness. All it takes is just a few minutes every day in meditation to return to the concertmaster and get on the right frequency for the performance of the day. Through practice, we will know where the space of attunement is and live from that place always.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you for both readings. Again, what a beautiful teaching. It makes me think of something. When he speaks of harmony and all of us having all of these already, which is not something new for most of us. You probably heard this before. No, you already have everything you need, so on, so on, so on. No, you are the perfect creation. But again, me being a person of analogies, I have one that just came up as Sandy was reading. And imagine you were born with a tattoo or something in your skin that doesn't go away. You were born with it and you're gonna die with it. But imagine that throughout time, it started to get covered. It got covered with something, with mud, with dirt, and it just got covered to the point where it cannot be seen anymore. And imagine that, well, it got covered before you became aware that it was even there. And then somebody tells you, oh yes, it's there. If you just dig in, you will find it. And then you say, well, but I have no recollection, no memory of this thing being there. And it looks like this superficial layer has always been part of me. It seems like there is nothing underneath. But then one day you say, well, okay, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do what this person is saying. So how do I uncover this? Well, you have to wash it. You have to scrub it. But because it's been there for so long, it might hurt a little. So be prepared. And then you start the process of uncovering it by cleaning it and scrubbing it. And there is pain, maybe blood comes out because, well, it's been there for a while. And then you might at some point say, I'm not doing this. This is not true. This hurts. This is insane. I'm harming myself. And then you quit. And you know what you're doing right there. It's the exact same thing when somebody tells us that we have this perfection within us, that we have all the tools that we need, but we don't believe them because we either never seen them or don't have the courage to go beyond the pain and see that there is something beautiful underneath that pain, that there is something that will answer all of my questions underneath the pain. So instead of, which is something we often do, run away from the pain. Understand that when you're running away from the pain, you're running away from uncovering that perfection and uncovering that the very tools that will allow you to reach this state of nirvana. Yeah. Questions or comments? No comments, no questions? You guys are quite silent today. So somebody's asleep. Who is that? Oh, no, you're not asleep. Okay. I didn't say any names. Okay, so no questions, no comments. Perfect. Beautiful. Let's see if there is anything else. Sorry, somebody opened the microphone.
Yeah.
Who is this?
This is Krista.
Okay.
And I just wanted to share something about that. This summer I went to a 10-day Vipassana training, day of silence. And in that time, it was suggested, there was an analogy that I think is interesting and related to what you were talking about. He said, when you go into surgery, you don't start the surgery and then say, oh, wait, I'm not quite ready. Let's do this next month. He said, you're here, you've committed to this 10 days, so do the work, even though it's going to be hard. You're going to want to leave, but stay with it and do the work. So you just made me think of that with what you were saying.
Okay. Yeah, it's absolutely true. And there are hundreds of analogies that we can find and come up with. And that's the beauty of, for me, analogies, because it give you the opportunity to share the same story in different ways, no? But also it's important, and this is why it's important that we participate, because somebody can be saying the exact same thing I said, but in very different words, from a different perspective. It's a different voice. And the people that I might not be able to reach, this other comment that it might be yours or any of you, might be able to reach that person and make the whole difference for that person. This is why it's important not to stay quiet, not only here, but in life itself. If you're coming from the space where this last reading is speaking of, if you're coming from a space of compassion, from a space of beyond the ego, then most likely you will always say something that that it will contribute others' lives, that will make other people's lives better. And of course, at first we're hesitant and scared of doing this because we say, well, I often like the saying says, no, if you don't have something good to say, then better say nothing, you know? But once you're in that state that you go beyond the ego, and this is not permanent often, it just, you come and you go. And you might feel this in a conversation where you say, it's just coming from your heart. And you know, there is no criticism, there is no judgment, it is just pure and complete compassion. Then it's time to say it, no? Regardless of how you feel about speaking out. Anyhow. Thank you, Kay. What's your name? Kay?
Krista.
Krista. Okay. Thank you, Krista.
Mm-hmm.
You're still muted, Andy.
Sorry. For how long was that happening? Anyhow, I said it's important that not only we share, but that we do it from that space of compassion. And I was saying, I forgot where I was. Anyhow, let's, I just want to review the teaching here. There's any, oh, I was saying that sometimes I repeat things and it's with intention. It's not because I have memory issues. Is because it's something that needs to be repeated over and over. And in a complement to Kay's comment and to my comments and to the reading is the space from where we come to face pain. And it's not from a space of fear, from a space of denial. It's from a space of embracing it, because I know that underneath there is something beautiful waiting. And it changes your perspective completely, because you're now excited about embracing this thing that you before were scared about. Okay, somebody have their mic on. Do you want to speak,
Yeah,
Patricia?
I'm going to try to. I'm a little nervous because I'm on the chat, but I guess I like what you said about the tattoo and basically I have an issue sometimes, and I'm really glad you said what you said, like especially in the spiritual community. And I have friends who say this, like rather than going back and dealing with anything in the past or healing, they think that basically you basically have to forgive and stay in the transcendental and stay in the meditative space and think positive. So I was kind of glad you said what you said, because I think some people don't really deal with things in life and they just move forward and try to move into the spiritual. And my issue is basically how could someone forgive as a method of healing if they don't even have a concept of what's happened to them in their life, or and also have a sense of themselves. Like, to me, it's just more the process of not really healing, like trying to forgive, not really dealing with anything. I don't know. I may not have said that well, but
You said it perfect.
okay.
Yeah, there is truth in your comment, and it just relates to, again, to the work that needs to get done before we let's come up with another analogy, since that's just imagine you're taking swimming lessons, and you're not going to become an Olympic swimmer from one day to the other, nor from 1 week to the other, nor from 1 month to the other, right? But your knowledge of swimming will grow every time you jump in the water to do your sessions, and it will continue to increase. So, but the one thing that why I'm telling this analogy that relates to your story, Patricia, is that certainly I will not be able to jump in the water until my level of proficiency has reached a specific level. I might be able to jump in the water with a floaty, with a board, or with something else, but I might not just be able to jump in the water right away at the first session, or at the second, or maybe after a month. And everybody is different. So you might be thinking, well, some people are able to just jump in the water and swim the first day. So what? Well, yeah, there is a person for every case. For every imaginable case, there is a case. There is a person. So yes, we can find one person that learned how to swim on the very first day. We could say those are the realized ones. Yeah, those that show up, and then since they're kids or at some point in their life, they're just open. Everything just opens. But that's not the case for most of people. You agree? Most of people needs to jump in the water first with some assistance, and then little by little get to that point where they can let go of the different tools. But again, going back to Patricia's comment in regards to these people that jump into wanting to embrace this spiritual world, this spiritual life, and this spiritual path, and then forget that they're still having to put their floaties to jump in the water, or hold on to their trainer's hands to be able to float. Yeah, of course. How does this relate in life? Well, it means that when I jump in and I realize, oops, I don't know how to float yet, and I start drowning. This is the situations that happen in life that we don't know how to handle, that we don't know how to deal with, that take us only deeper into whatever it is that we are experiencing, that, like Patricia said, we have not dealt with yet because we want to look the other way. Yeah, so I don't know if that complements or help in any way.
Can I add something?
Absolutely. Who is this?
Chris.
Okay, go ahead, Chris.
I think that I guess the more I learn and the more I hear and the more, I mean, a lot of what we're talking about is like the cycles, what we keep talking about in the mind, the stuff, the little things that we have, or our own troubles, and they manifest themselves in the outside world. But there are also the good things that come of that. Because sometimes people who are struggling, like what you're saying, you know, if you will find bigger and better things because you're struggling, simply because you're struggling. You have to be that way. You have to be stuck. You have to be able to not swim and almost drown in order to get up there and maybe drown and maybe, you know, rise above it and become an Olympic swimmer because you had an experience of almost drowning. I mean, those things, all of those things, everything is relative. At least from what I am, if I'm not wrong, everything's relative. It's all how much you decide to get out of whatever pain that you're in, or to scratch it off. Sometimes you don't want to scratch it off. Sometimes you need to be there for a while in order to get past, to get something great. You know, sometimes the greatest treasures are found in the darkest waters. You got to be able to get through that water and get that, whatever you're getting, to be there. So I think that's important too. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. Thanks for sharing that. Absolutely. And yeah, again, we must remind to ourselves that most of things in life are not good or bad. These are concepts that we create and based on something that we already talked in previous classes, the likes and dislikes, you know, the raga and the vesha, the things that I feel attracted to and the things I feel a rejection towards. Yeah. And when I go beyond that, then I just see things for what they are. And therefore I understand that likes and dislikes are, like Chris said, relative. Because most, if not all, of the things we're experiencing in this realm is relative. And most, if not all, of the things that we are experiencing are neither good nor bad. Of course, going into these concepts that are mostly Vedanta teaches us these concepts, going into these concepts from a very shallow and superficial point of view and from a very egocentric point of view can take you into a big deal of trouble, problems, and suffering. So we have to keep in mind that when we are ready to explore this concept of non-duality, we have to first know the groundings of this concept of non-duality. Anyone else? Any other comment? Any other question? Sharings? Okay. Yes, that is correct.
I think we need a
Advaita
course.
Vedanta.
I think we need a course in Ayurvedic sound healing. Get a traditional raga Indian music teacher, because we're having this whole discussion. I'm trying to listen to you, but then there's this discussion on the chat about music healing, and actually it would be really cool to have a class where we had someone who is trained in Indian classical music teach us about ragas and using them therapeutically and all of that stuff. So just as an aside. But you don't need to go follow the whole thread because it's off on a off on its own thing.
Yeah. Sound on its own. We could build a whole course in sound on its own, and the power of sound, which is the origin of creation. No, when we talk about the Om being the original seed, the original bija, and the source of all creation. No. The sound that still resounds throughout the universe, that resounded from the very moment of the Big Bang and still resounds today, and it will resound until the next cycle. So yeah, sound is absolutely fascinating. Is one of my passions too. There is, of course, the classical Indian musicians do not go into this stream. I did study traditional Indian music, and my teacher wanted to have nothing to do with the esoteric aspect of Indian music, the instruments and so on. But it's there. No, you can't. I never talked to him about it, but it is there. It exists and it's undeniable. But you have to find the right teacher. Anyhow, Stephanie, since you're there, let's. You told me you had a case study that you wanted to present. So let's go on with that.
Okay, let me. I have it up here. Let me just.
Okay, pull it out.
Page in front of me. Okay. All right, so this is a 49-year-old female, and she did the form. I think she's more Pitta than Vata. I think she has more Vata imbalance. She might be either Pitta or Vata, but I actually think she's predominantly Pitta, secondarily Vata, and then third Kapha. So in her Vikruti, her imbalance is everything's up. Her Vata is way up, her Pitta is up, and her Kapha is up too. I'll just go over her health real quick, but the primary.
Stephanie, just a second. Could you share for in the chat the information you sent me via email, just so everybody have that in case they want to use that case study too?
You know what? I can post it in the Sister Science because I'm on a different. I'm on a different.
Okay.
A tablet, and this is on the computer.
Okay, well, so everybody knows that Stephanie's going to share that in the Sister Science group if you're interested in using this case study for yourself.
Yeah. I'll just share my case study notes with them. Okay, so she's just quick with her health background, but this is more about the spiritual and emotional stuff. She's dealing with fatigue, acquired hypothyroidism, perimenopausal, fibromyalgia, migraines, and she also has Meniere's disease, which is a congenital inner ear thing where she can get dizzy and even fall down because her ear balance gets messed up. Along with that, she's dealing with a huge amount of stress. She's a caretaker for her elderly father who is terminally ill, as well as a 5-year-old grandchild that she has partial custody of. And she's trying to reconcile with her husband after 22 years of marriage. When she first married her husband, he was a very straight-laced, church-going kind of guy, did all the right things. And then he had a business that was very successful financially. And then the recession hit 2008, about 10 years ago, and he almost lost everything. Because of this, he started drinking, and then the drinking led to drugs, and then this ended up becoming a lifestyle for him. He became unfaithful. He even engaged engaged in prostitution, saying he actually purchased prostitution services. He spent money on other women, including buying, after he started to get his money back, paid to renovate the house of a mistress. So they had gone through a separation because of all of this. But he's apparently trying to clean his life up, and she's willing to reconcile. But she's wondering if she's doing the right thing. She's going through a depression right now with all of this stress and the stuff going on with her husband. When she was a child, she was abused by her mother, and her dad was gone a lot for work. So she has a tendency towards depression with the childhood. and she has a tendency to spiral, and she wants to keep herself from going into a downward spiral with everything. So that's the overview.
Okay. Well, I know that you already mentioned a lot of possible causes of stress, but is she able to vocalize, to be direct in what she consider the causes of stress?
I mean, with me, when I had my session with her, she was very forthcoming, and she was very much, willing to talk about it and open to sharing. So I think she's very good with expressing herself. She's not.
Okay.
She may. I don't know if she has support where she is at home to talk about it, but she's certainly willing to talk about it with other people, from my perception, and she's not, trying to bottle it in and hide it. I think she's trying to deal with it and confront it, and very much an aware, a person who's, she's studying Ayurveda and applying Ayurveda to her life and doing all of the right things.
She's very open about it. So then my question would be to you. Were you able to identify when talking to her? Did you talk to her on the phone personally?
I did a video.
Okay, video.
Yeah.
Were you able to identify a specific point when she was telling her story where she really got emotional or sensitive or stressed out about any of these things that she is sharing?
I had mentioned to her that with all the stuff that she's dealing with, for example, even just the dizziness and falling down out of the blue that she can suffer, she seems very calm about it compared to, that's why I don't think she's primarily Vata type, because Vata type would be just freaking out. She said to me that this is because she's done years and years of spiritual work to get here, and that she used to be a lot more frazzled, but that she has to, she didn't use these words, these are my words, she has to soldier through and be strong because of everything that's going on. So she doesn't let this stuff stop her, and she doesn't let herself, I don't, like I said, I don't think she's repressing. I think she's a very strong person who is dealing with a lot of stuff in a very powerful way. But could she maybe have more emotional release? I don't know, but she wasn't, I didn't perceive her as being, she certainly wasn't like, crying her eyes out to me, I guess is the short version of that.
Tell me something. When she was talking about the things from her past, like the mother abuse, the father being absent and all those things, did you notice any fluctuation in herself, in her voice, did you notice any resentment? Often when we speak, the way we speak, the tone we use, the body language is telling us whether we are still connected to that experience. Yeah, because this is the thing. For somebody that it's already in this saying journey of I'm accepting that these things happen. I'm not a victim anymore. Say, yeah, I'm not feeling a victim anymore. Then either there is still an attachment to the things that happened in the past, or there is still the time to come to say, I don't need this anymore. It's not affecting me. Therefore, I'm not even going to talk about it. Yeah. In which space would you say she is?
I think that she's more affected right now by her husband than what happened when she was a child. I'm not saying, and I can't speak for her. She's a student, and she might be on the call right now. She's certainly welcome to chime in if she wants. I told her I got permission to do, to present this, and I told her if you want to speak up, feel free, but I'm not going to out you. So,
okay.
But
I'll out myself.
Okay, go ahead.
It's me.
Okay. Hello, Tamara.
Hello.
Okay. So since you already heard all the interaction between Stephanie and I, would you be able to fill in the blanks?
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I don't think I'm attached to the abuse I suffered as a child. but I do think it affects how I relate to other people. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. So therefore, I think it puts me in a position of, tolerating a lot of things that I probably shouldn't. But then I balance the line, okay, then what is unconditional love and what is forgiveness? So I balance the line between, should I let my boundaries be violated and tolerate this behavior, or should I love unconditionally?
Okay. Okay, perfect. Yeah, that helps a lot. So of course, we already know all of the traditional um, recommendations of Ayurveda, of the food, of the activities, so on, so on, so on. So as far as we are following that, and we're exclusively, as you already know, all of you, dealing with the mental, emotional, psychological aspect of what Stephanie described, which now we know is Tamar. The first question I would like to answer is, forget about the things that the husband did. Forget about the things that other people did to me. I want to really put that aside, make a conscious effort to put that aside and ask to my heart, to my higher self, how do I feel about this human being? Now, I know this might feel like, well, but the fact that the things he did are part of who he is, and therefore then I have to remember, not necessarily. Yeah, because here's one thing, is we have to learn to recognize the difference from past and present. If somebody did something to me, or if somebody is doing something, right?
Right.
There's a
Yes.
difference there. If somebody did something that affected me in a way, then I still have the choice to say, okay, I don't want to say I forgive you, if that's, in lack of better words, I forgive you, I let go of this. Yeah, I hope you do too, but I want to move on with my life. This is very fair.
Mhm.
Yeah. Or saying the other way, no, I forgive the situation, I forget, and let's continue. Let's move on. No, to do this, we have to be in a space of real emotional maturity. Yeah. So if I'm not in that space, then I have to work on who? On myself, on getting to that space of emotional maturity and say, hey, I'm not in this space of emotional maturity where I can let go of this. So I need to go away, let go of this, and then maybe come back. We'll see if life gathers us again, and then we'll continue. But it's not fair for the other person that because I'm not mature enough, then I'm going to drag them in. Correct? Regardless of what they did. Now, if it's a present situation, if it's something that is happening at this moment, yeah, saying this person is doing detrimental things to themselves, and therefore these things are affecting me because we live together, we share a life, or whatever is the case. If that is the case, then of course we have to again turn around and say, okay, what are my values? What my moral allows me to bring into my life? And say, okay, well, these are my list of principles and values, and they're not based on shallow beliefs. They're based on the universal principles that allow us to grow and expand ourselves so we can be in this harmony we are discussing. So if something is not, and this is a very important separation, because if I'm talking about, oh, I just don't like your hair, and that's why I'm leaving you, no? That we know that is very superficial, because I'm not able to really connect with the essence of this person, which is why I asked the first question. If you already been with this person for long enough, you know the essence of this person. And that is what we have to look at when we look at people. The essence, not what they have done or they will do in the future. Because we are all imperfect until we reach that level. And we still, even at that level, might still continue to perform with imperfect acts. And therefore, if we want to be at peace and live in harmony, we have to see beyond the actions and look into the essence of the person and say, you know what? I love that essence, and I love it in a romantic way. And I'm going to fight for that essence to shine again. But of course, the other person needs to be willing to do the same. So again, if this person is violating your moral conduct, your values, your principles, then only you know when enough is enough. Only you know, based on those principles and those values and so on, when it's harming you, is bringing you out of balance, and then saying, okay, hey, I need to move away, aside. And when the person asks why, well, because of these situations, understanding that this needs to be done from the most possible non-judgmental space. So we need to be very mindful of not judging the person and saying, because you're doing this. No, it's simply this action that you're engaging in at this point in your life is affecting me deeply. And I need to preserve my personal space, my personal sanity, my personal harmony and balance. It's not about you. It's not at all, because it never was. Because this person is choosing the actions that is performing based on many different factors, addictions and so on, trauma, so on. But all of those things are things that if we want them, they can stay in the past. Yeah. And how we do that is by saying, okay, I'm making a commitment to rise above the occasion. Yeah, which in this case, if I'm an alcoholic, is say, okay, I need help. I'm going to go to AA. And then the other person that is keeping focus in the essence, in the heart of that person, says, absolutely, I can see how. By you saying, I love myself and I'm going to take care of myself, you are opening that door again for both of the essences to have this harmonious interaction. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense, yes.
Okay. So these are, again, the crucial question here is connect to the essence of your partner, and are these situations happening in the moment or they already stopped? And it's important. Some actions might take a little longer to overcome, but the intention is there. Yeah, of course. Like drinking, we know that it's not like, well, I'm going to stop drinking gradually. We know that doesn't work. No,
Right.
You either stop drinking or you don't. You might have a step back, and sometimes people, what's the word that they use?
Relapse.
When they relapse, exactly. That we need to keep that there. It might happen. It might happen. Hopefully, with the unconditional love of all those that care, it might not happen, but it does not depend on that. It depends on the person continuously doing the work. That person, you're not there to be the fixer, the changer, the bringer of peace. No, you're there to support. How? However that person is needing that support. So there's also, we have to change our approach of, oh, I'm going to help you by giving you all of these things and telling you what you need to do. That's not how we help. We often help, and this depends on each individual, we help with simply being there, our presence. Yeah, we help with joining the meetings. We help. There's so many different ways, but you have to build that list of how do I help you with the person. Yeah. Yes. So it's mostly up to them. How do you want to be assisted? I'm here, arms open. How can I be helpful? This is the real karmic action. I am not attached to what you do or how it ends up. I will still love you because that essence I see inside of you will never change. And I will remain in love with that essence forever. But we might not be able to stay physically together forever. Yeah. So is there anything else you would like to share? Stephanie, you want to jump in? Tamara?
Andy? Hello?
Yes?
Yeah, sorry to bother you. This is Rio Rita. Namaste. How are you
You're
doing?
not bothering. We're great.
Yeah. Andy, I have a question because, you know, I've read quite a lot of Vedanta text, right? Vedic philosophy, psychology. And basically, lots of philosophers saying that we are attracting the situations ourselves, and we are attracting people into our life, people that we deserve to attract. How would you, you know, what is your opinion on that, right? I know it could be a little bit hard, right? Because, oh my God, why did I attract certain friends, husband, even sometimes children? But, you know, like, because I'm also in Vedic astrology, right? So I see a little bit deeper interpretation than that. So the question is like, if it's sometimes worth of our time here in our present reincarnation to make an effort to change something which is almost unchangeable, especially if the gunas are different. For example, if Tamara, she's on a sattvic path and her husband still continues with rajas and tamas, so that would be a lot of her effort, years, you know, etc., etc. And finally, like, how would you, what do you think about that?
Oh, that's a fascinating subject, the Vedic astrology and the question on its own. Yeah, I would just say in regards to one word that you used, deserve. If people deserve something, I always like to address the word itself and the meaning that everybody gives to this word deserve. No, but I think I get from where you're using it. Especially when we talk about Vedic astrology, and we of course have to look at karma, at rebirthing, and so on, so on. No? And where the stars were when I was born, and of course that determines things that are going to simply be inherit to me and to my existence in this birth. No,
it just, sorry Andy, I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Go
It's
ahead,
just through the years of being with the clients, right? And you know, with different people, different nationalities, ages, etc. I just noticed that some people are prepared to receive help, and it works just miracle, you know, everything to do with mantra, astrology, Ayurveda, because they're just the deepest science ever on this planet. It's Ayurveda, all the Vedic science, you know. But some other people, they might already have some knowledge, but they are not prepared to receive more knowledge to be balanced, to be in harmony. So, you know, by putting so much effort, by wasting your own ojas, right? Sometimes it's not worth it because the person wants to do those changes himself or herself, right? So so for me in the future, what I'm working right now is to develop my buddhi more and more, to discover those people and not to
Exactly, that is correct. No, I wasn't interrupting you. Continue.
No, for sure, that's what I want.
Yes. And that is the answer to the question, is how do I know I'm not wasting my time? No, and understand everybody that wasting means, from the perspective that Rita and I are saying it,
energy,
is that
right?
we understand that it's not going to go anywhere else because it's kind of inbound in your karma, in your route. This question can only be answered by the person that is living this, in this case Tamara, and through, like you said, developing the buddhi, developing the intellect, developing this sense of higher self, where I can feel, not from likes and dislikes, not from the karmic patterns, but from the connection with the higher self, with the universal consciousness, that this is the path I am meant to take. Yeah, that is one. The other one is in regards to this the Vedic astrology. We also know that the universe is a canvas that it constantly is going from blank into creation, blank into creation. What I'm saying with this is that we are not really able to see the future. We are able to see the possible consequences of different futures. And sometimes the strongest one, like if you do now Tamara's chart, you will find this particular situation, because that's the one she's creating, not only in her current experience, but in her mind, in her higher self. So that's the one that's going to show up the more. And I know a lot of Vedic astrologists don't agree with this perception of this science, but what I'm trying to say is that there is not really a written future, one written future. There are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of written futures. And every choice we make in our life is drifting towards is making the intention of that future becoming true stronger and stronger. And as soon as you change and shift, that future fades. It doesn't disappear, but it fades. And another one begins to grow stronger. I hope this makes sense.
No, for sure. Like Vedic astrology, sorry for the noise, my kid. Vedic astrology sees the future as something changeable. And certainly there are lots of aspects that, we call it destiny, but many other things, 3/4 of the birth chart, of course, it could be changed, right? But what I'm saying is that sometimes our own tamas close our eyes and our soul. So we think we are on the right, path, right? And we think we're doing everything in a correct way. But finally, if we are with sattva, it is much more clear. So the person, if you are attracting sattva, so being with a person that is far away from sattva, is full of rajas and tamas, probably it wouldn't be a good idea. Or you need to have lots of essential energy, your own ojas, strong arogya, your physical body, etc., to change. So what I'm saying, the god Mangala is our god of Mars, right? It's making changes in this world. So sometimes, like from tamas, you cannot pursue the sattva straight away. You need to go through rajas. You have to, right? Yeah. So my question is, if Tamara has enough strength to herself to go through that and to solve all that, karma that is around her.
So the other question from what you're saying too is, of course, is this, and I completely agree with what you said in this portion of, there are certain things that are just meant to be. Yeah, very few, but very important, very powerful, sure. And that
we are not
cannot
gods,
be
right?
changed.
Not even semi-gods. Yeah. So.
Exactly. So we don't know if this is Tamara's case, if this is just one of those situations that she is not able to get out of it. She's just able to choose how to deal with. And Tamara, we don't know this, so don't take this as the gospel.
No, don't take that personally. It's just.
But what Riorita is saying is very important. You need to get to that point where you are certain that the knowledge, the wisdom is coming from the right place. And of course, this is why we do our own work. Yeah. This is where I do my homework every day, to make sure that I am in what Riorita is describing as this sattvic state, where the mind is clear, where there is not these veils that allow us to not see things for what they are. So yes, if that is the case, then and again, that's why I started with that question. You have to ask that question to yourself. If you're not in that space, then you will have to first get to that space. And this is just to finish my sentence. 1 second. If you get to the point where you say, I am doubtful, I'm not sure, then you need to retreat, take the time, and find the answer. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Okay, so first of all, I think Tamara is it Tamara? I'm sorry. Very strong, and I think that she's struggling with self-doubt, but I think underneath that self-doubt, she's very strong and can make the right decision. As you were talking, I kind of took notes to kind of put what you said into a little bit of a process, because whenever I'm trying to talk to a client, I need to kind of give them homework, right? So I'm going to repeat this back to you, and I want to see if this sounds kind of like what you said, but kind of in a 5-step process. The first step would be to connect with yourself. I put capital S, to clarify your values. And you can do this through meditation and journaling. The second step would be to maybe do a meditation to connect with the essence of the person in question. Now I could get more specific about the type of meditation, but I'm just doing an overall overview. 3, observe their current behavior with some detachment but unconditional love to kind of assess the situation from a hopefully sattvic perspective. 4, set limits and boundaries based on your values, and you might need to separate physically from the person while still loving them unconditionally. And regardless of what happens, step 5 is continue to connect back with yourself through meditation and your spiritual practice.
Perfect bullet points, Stephanie. I think
Okay,
those
that was
are
all you. I just
excellent
Sorry,
recommendations.
Stephanie, can I add something? Can I?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's great, Stephanie. I mean, you're doing an awesome job, you know, it's amazing. I would also add probably to visit places of strength, like powerful places where 2 of them can visit, right? That could be the island of Kauai, right? That's one of the places, you know. That could be the island Isla Mujeres in you know, in Mexico, because when you're doing all that meditation, mantra, you know, right eating, you know, just together as a couple, because you're treating here a couple, it's not only Tamara, you have 2 people. So by visiting those places of power, I call them, right? So the process of rasayana, rejuvenation of the emotions would happen, you know, more quickly, in my opinion, you know, because, you know, I had couples like that, and it did work miracles, even when they start visiting ashrams or churches on a frequent basis, because they're holy places where you rejuvenate yourself and where you feel more in balance, and you can do then visualization at home through those places. That's up to you, Stephanie. Tamara, she's working with you, so I'm just kind of adding small, you know,
No,
tips. Thank you.
that's the
Namaste.
whole point.
Thank you.
That's the whole point here, Rita, is to share all of these things and then come up with something together. Of course, ultimately is in this case Tamara who is going to decide which path she takes, but I'm sure she values and appreciates all of our insights. Yeah. And here is another insight, and it's something I want to just build on. Heidi is posted, and you can read it in the chat, about her and her partner being together 24 years and met from in early 20s, being Rajistic Tamasic. And she says, well, she 10 plus years ago, she started the yogi path, but the partner still remains in a different space than hers, and just sometimes drinks alcohol every night, smokes, and things she never do. It's important to recognize too that we're not in this path to change people. We're not in this path to make people go from one state to another. We're not in this path to any of that. We're in this path because we want to grow and expand ourselves to whatever extent we want. That's up to us. And therefore it's also up to the other person that is with us, or the people that surround our lives. Where do they want to go and what do they want to do? So in some cases, the things that other people do not overstep our boundaries, our values, our principles, our moral codes of conduct. And as of course, remember again, these things I just mentioned, the values and so on, they need to be built from the universal principles. If they're built from your ego, then you might most likely never be able to have a satisfactory relationship with anyone, because you are just coming from the selfish ego. And then the world have to be my way. And if it's not my way, then go on. You're not worth it. No? And we have to understand that if we are in that space, which is that lower space of consciousness, then we need to start the work by accepting that that's not what life is about. Take on the principles, the universal principles, the Rita, and build our values our codes of conduct and morals, our all of those things from those principles. It will make your life a lot easier. So you might find people out there that say, yeah, this is part of my values, this is part of my beliefs. But when you look at them, is they're coming from a selfish, lower being point of view. And of course, they just bring harm to the person and bring harm to those surrounding them. So, and then you can manage to live in a relationship like Heidi is saying that well, I mean, I don't know the extent of that relationship, but a relationship where both people feel connected, in harmony, in balance, that they're both growing, but they are in different paths. Any more comments or questions?
I just, after what you said, wanted to add, it's like in Heidi's situation, like you said, we don't know in depth, but I felt that there is also an importance of respect, both self-respect and to the other, and in between the two of people. Yes, could I express this? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
In that aspect also, Tamara, it can be helpful, I hope, with your own respect, because that's one kind of a value that we do emotionally and mentally as well get affected and feel good or bad, being respected or respecting our own self as well. That's just came up to my mind after your words. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Denise. And again, no, this is another good example of when I set my boundaries and I say, okay, this is respectful and this is disrespectful. It needs to come from the same space, from the higher self, not from the ego self. Because if it comes from the ego self, again, that's when we get triggered by so many different things. And the neighbor's opinion we feel is disrespectful, and so many things around life, we consider them disrespectful, not because they are, but because we created this set of values and beliefs based on or from our lower self, the one that is driven by ego and is driven by likes and dislikes. So things that are disrespectful are not things that I like or dislike, are things that are detrimental to life itself or are the opposite. And then those are things that I either respect or disrespect, no, or find respectful or disrespectful. It's very, very important and very delicate to learn to discern between both of those things. Whenever you're creating, and forget about, we're talking about creating whatever it is, everything is creation. Whatever it is you're creating, if it's coming from the lower self, the ego self, the likes and dislikes, you are going to find a path full of suffering. If you build from the higher self, from being connected with the universal source, you will find a much easier life. You will find that a lot of things that before or in other people, they find them disrespectful, they find them annoying, or they find them wrong. You remain indifferent. You remain in this space. Where is it? Let me find it out again. Where is the reading? Where is the reading? Here it is. No, it's not here. I cannot find it. Here it is. Okay. The second story, the end of the story. We're in that space of, where is it? No, it's not the second. Sorry, guys. It's the first. Benevolent indifference. We're in that space of benevolent indifference. So anyhow, we hit the 2 hours mark, and so I'm going to say goodbye to all of those that are ready to leave. Some of you have already checked out, and if you need to leave, feel free to. Thank you for coming. It was great having you. Thank you for your presence, your participation, your effort, your commitment. And I will still stay here for a few more minutes to continue either talking about these subjects or addressing more questions that some other students might have. So there is still 32, 31 people in the chat. Who else would like to participate? Questions, again, open to whatever question you could have.
I have one more thing to add or
Go
to
ahead.
ask.
Go ahead, Chris.
So a lot of, I actually kind of just came from something that was really cool. My wife and I went to a marriage counseling retreat, and it was really cool because it's something they offer and we just usually go. What they were doing, they did a lot of emotional studies.
We lost you, Chris.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we lost you for a
Can you hear
second.
me?
Go ahead. We lost you for a second. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say, if you could find somebody who does emotionally focused therapy, it's called EFT, not the EFT tapping technique, but it was really cool. Like, my wife is in the military, and so there's a bunch of people, like headstrong, real hard guys, and within the first couple hours or the first hour, they had these military dudes like in tears. And a lot of the stuff that they talked about was most everything that we do is a plea for attention or connection. And I mean, I don't know, maybe I would probably challenge you guys to figure out where those connections, where he thought he went wrong, or he thought he couldn't come to you with what he may have felt too ugly or too this or too that. Or, I mean, in our society nowadays, I mean, there are so many things that are like shunned attitudes and actions and behaviors, and most of them are just a plea for connection.
And Chris,
and so,
what you're saying actually is right on. And I have done the EFT. It's amazing. And a lot of what you said is right on. You know, and one thing, you know, since all of this stuff that he's been doing over the past, you know, decade has come to light, it really has opened up some super honest conversation that we have never engaged in before. So, you know, as icky as this stuff is, it kind of has a good side too, because we're connecting more now than, you know, we ever have in almost 23 years of marriage.
Beautiful. And yeah, I agree with both of you guys. The tapping is an amazing tool. If you have not tried, if you don't know what it is, it's very simple. You don't need deep training to do it. You can even download the instructions from the original tapping guy. I can't remember his name. You can find him online, and it's truly a very simple and a very effective tool. It might not erase everything out of your life in seconds, but it is very useful, especially if you have recurrent issues, to use it when you're having these moments. Actually, I just recommended it to one of the peers from this group, and she started using it with herself and her daughter, and she's sent me an email saying that she's noticing the changes right away from the day one, from the first time. So it is a very powerful tool. We cannot say we can only rely on that, but it definitely is very useful.
I agree with everything you just said about EFT. It's great. I think Chris was talking about something different, saying it wasn't EFT, but emotion-focused therapy. And if you look up emotion-focused therapy, there's actually steps. And I think that's what he was talking about, but do EFT too, because that helps. He can clarify.
Yeah, I had my doubts about EFT is something else, but the tapping he referred to, I guess Chris can explain it, no, but is the tapping of certain points in the body, Chris?
Actually, yeah, I was speaking of just the therapy part of it, but the tapping is really, really good. Because I thought it was tapping in the first place before we even went to it. And we've been to a few marriage counselor things before, and we've done the, because they make it available for you in the Army or in the military, because it's, you know, it's a very stressful profession. And I don't know. I mean, one of the counselors came to us and was like, you know, you guys are in a marriage and you've chosen to be a part of someone's life, and it's where you can start to work on these things, the ugly things that come out in you, or the things that may not, I mean, we think they're ugly, but the things that are a part of you that make you do some certain things that are not necessarily accepted by everyone, or would be accepted by your partner, or would be this. In a marriage or a friendship or a partnership or a community is something, if you're truly trying to develop, you can start to break down those walls like you talked about, having those honest conversations. Now, with that said, this may lead to a different kind of relationship. That's for you to decide, because you don't have to be with him to help him grow. Because it sounds like he's growing, and it sounds like you're growing, and growing has pain. Like you talked about earlier, Andy, you got to scratch off that pain to get to the beauty, but it may not be that perfect skin anymore. I mean, it's a different thing. And you just, I don't know, maybe have to be open to it being a different thing, but it could be the same. So I guess that, what is it, what you just said, that benevolent, I'm not sure what was it you said? Indifference, benevolent indifference?
Yes, that's correct.
It's really hard, but you know, my heart goes out to you, and
it is hard. It's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. But you know, it's worth it to me. You know, the work is worth it.
Yeah, that's what matters.
Yeah.
And embrace it again to all of us. We just have to embrace this. I see them as challenges, and embrace this challenge with a beautiful smile and arms open, knowing that you have the tools in your bag to deal with these things. This is very important, of course. No, it's like saying, I'm going to embrace the ocean without knowing how to swim or have any idea. No, so I already have the tools, and then it's, oh yeah, there is a fear in jumping in. That first time is just the butterflies, but I am smiling and willing to do it. You know, because ultimately, when we take that approach to life, nothing is a waste of time. Nothing it brings suffering. Nothing is a burden on its own. It's all a beautiful gift from life. Thanks for sharing, Tamara. That was really beautiful, and coming out and sharing with the whole group. Is anybody else? There's still 20 participants. Anybody else that would like to either share something in regards to what we talk, or have questions, comments? Patricia.
Okay, I'm going to try to speak again. Hopefully I'll make sense. I guess I wanted to ask you a question. And sometimes when I look at people, I intuitively get information. So with Tamara, I'm sorry, is it Tamara? Like when I look at her, I see like tears, sadness, grief almost like the weight of the situation that's happened, the burden of the situation, like the imprint. And I know Stephanie said all of her doses were increased or out of balance, and maybe she's got some, on a physical side, hormone issues or thyroid. But like from the emotional side, what Ayurveda practices would you suggest to help with that? Like to help her maybe be free of like burden, the weight, emotions?
I actually, can I just interrupt real quick?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead,
I'll
Stephanie.
tell you what I told her in my session, my initial session with her. I work with a Kundalini yoga teacher named Siri Gian, and she has this wonderful practice. So it's not necessarily Ayurveda, but she has a wonderful practice called heart breath. And you breathe, it's like a pranayama, but you're breathing in and out of your heart and imagining that heart energy moving in and out with the breath. And it's also really great with when you're dealing with hurt and forgiveness, and it's a very simple practice. So that was just the only practice I gave her, because also I knew we were going to talk on this call. And then I gave her some dietary and other Ayurvedic stuff, Vata Pitta pacifying diet, have more EF, you know, some other stuff I can certainly read off. But the primary thing I just told her was to just start with this very simple practice of just heart breathing to just help center herself and get into that space, that sattvic space of unconditional love. And it doesn't mean that you have to take somebody back, you know, if that's not the right thing for you, but it can also help you let go if you need to. So.
Yeah, and that sounds a little, sometimes some people might think it sounds redundant to say like, oh, focus on the heart. The tools to the most powerful tools to work on the emotional side, on the psychological side are very few. Of course, there are many complementary tools, but working in the heart, especially when you're dealing with emotional things, is the most powerful tool you're going to find. So, Tamara, you came to one of our trainings. You remember we did the heart meditation, and you remember the experience of doing the heart meditation, which relates to what Stefan is saying. Working on the heart, no matter how you do it, of course, some ways are more effective than others, but it's going to have a tremendous effect on how we manage and how fast we manage to connect with our higher self, with universal consciousness. And again, when I'm connected with universal consciousness, things just start to flow, and doubt dissipates, and confusing or contradictory thoughts are not there anymore. And it was all with a very simple yet very powerful technique. And it was to connect with my heart, to open the heart, to find that direct connection. So as one of the other students pointed out, so I don't feel depleted of my energy, because I am connecting with this source that is constantly refilling that heart with more energy, so I can deal with literally whatever life throws at me. And it's not from a space of a finite energy reservoir, is from a space of infinite energy reservoir. And then, of course, when we see it that way, it's like, well, sure. It's like being a trillionaire and having people asking you for $10. It's like, I have 100. I don't care. We become extremely giving towards the world. And then all of these things that people are dealing with, to us, they feel like nothing, like a trillionaire feels in giving you $100. And this is one of the principles of yogis. Even there are stories about, they say that when you manage to master your higher self, of course, one of the benefits is that digestion becomes perfect, and yogis, true yogis, could go into any town and eat any food and never get poisoned, there are stories of yogis being able to go to towns with leprosy, with very contagious diseases, and go in and out unharmed. And people wonder how, because they're connecting to this source that creates this sort of bubble around them. And it's not a bubble that disconnects them from the world. It's a bubble that protects them from it. So when you connecting with that space, it's literally the sky, like they say, the sky is the limit. So this is very, very important. Thank you, Stephanie, for bringing that up, and for all your insights, your comments, and for Tamara, again, for sharing, and for all of those that participated, Patricia, Chris, Denise, so many others. It's beautiful to have your insights and your opinions, your sharings. And finally, let's take one more, whether it's a question or a comment. No one else? Perfect. And just to complement finally.
Wait, I'm sorry, Andy.
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Hold on. I'm sorry, I have one more thing to say. And this might, I don't know what you guys, if you guys have kids or any kind of things that you guys do together or that binds you together. But I know that like when people first get into relationships, they tend to have a common thing that they fight for, believe in, or this, that, and the other, that they're kind of something common that they're doing. So maybe if you guys can find something that you guys can do together to tackle, to accomplish, that might help.
Yeah, Chris, I don't know if Tamara is still there, because I see her share is empty. She's still online, but I'm not sure if she listened to you. So you might want to maybe share that with her over an email, or send her a private message. Yeah, and to complement just Patricia's question in regards to, okay, the heart, we found out, or we came up with, the heart is the most important one, tool that Tamara needs to focus on. But there are, like we said, no, the tapping, there are so many different therapies that can be useful and beneficial. We mentioned a few of them, and Stephanie made a short list of them. But we agreed that, well, the most important one is for her to open her heart and genuinely, from a space of connection with universal consciousness, connect with herself and therefore with her husband in this case. Perfect, guys. Thank you very much, especially for those that stayed for the extra 20 minutes. Beautiful session. I'm taking a lot from it. And you get nothing but thanks to you all for participating, and those that are in watching the recorded version. Remember to submit your homework using the form that we spoke about in the beginning of the class. I know that you don't have access to the chat, so if you just Google Yoga Veda Institute homework submission guidelines, you will get the first hit is that one. So that will take you to that link. And if still that doesn't work, just send an email to hello@YogaVeda, and they will share the link with you. But this is how I find the link, so I'm certain you will find it that way. Thank you, guys. Have a beautiful week, you beautiful people, and see you next week. Signing out now. Take care.